What's up guys, DuArktik here with another Marvel Strike Force video, and in this video we're going to do an update to the infographic of Bifrost. We finally have the full team unlocked and we no longer have first impressions. We had the entire month to test out this team, not only in raids but also Alliance Wars, Cosmic Crucible and so on. And now we have some final recommendations in terms of the T4s, eyes await, position of the characters and so on. There are quite a lot of T4s that you can skip if you focus on the mechanics of the team and if you follow my advices, right? And this will allow you to save not only T4s, but you can also save a lot of gear and also a lot of training materials, gold, because yes, if you use the right eyes await setup, the right position and the right T4s, you don't have to over-invest on this team in order to be extremely successful on the incursion raids. This will allow you to beat difficulty 4 and difficulty 5 super easy, and then for difficulty 6 you just have to put more gear into them. But we're gonna talk about all of that, and as always, if you like the information on these videos, make sure you share it to your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you are new to my channel, make sure you subscribe for more Marvel Strike Force content, and make sure you smash that like button like a boss. Okay, let's talk about Bifrost. As always, you can find the infographics for this on my Discord. The link for my Discord will be in the description, and that's it. As you can see, this no longer says first impressions, and it's quite different from one we had before. There are a lot of T4s that we're gonna skip from here. We changed the position of the team a little bit as well, and also the eyes awaits. We're going to talk about battery build and the rework that he had, what was the impact for this character as well, and then we're going to take a full look on the game modes and see where you want to focus in order to use these characters to their maximum potential and open a few doors with other characters and take advantage of your Bifrost characters. Okay, so let's take a look at the first character of the team, the most important character on this team. It's gonna be Vahl. Vahl is the centerpiece of this team. Vahl is the most important character on this team, especially for the Mystic raids. And to be honest, you don't need any other Bifrost character. The only Bifrost character that you really need for raids is Vahl. There are a few other characters that are important as well, like Sylvie and Loki. And then the other two characters, Battery Bill and Teen Loki, they don't really matter at all. So if you are trying to save as much gear as possible, if you invested on your new warriors, Deadpool, on Morgan Le Fay, on Eternals, on Dormammu, Doctor Doom and so on, the only character you really need is Vahl. But if you still want to play around with your Bifrost, Loki and Sylvie are going to be your second and third options. Teen Loki and Battery Build, they are really not important, so keep that in mind. If you really want to save on gold and training materials, you don't have to gear up Teen Loki and Battery Build. Okay, so let's talk about the T4s for Vahl. T4 on the basic, it's very important to have because you are flipping more positive effects on the enemies and you are going to apply heal block to your enemies. You have Kestrel, you have Cersei, you have Icarus, you have Squirrel Girls, all these characters that are able to heal up not only themselves but also the allies. So having this extra heal block is important, especially because the basic of Vahl attacks multiple targets. So that's going to be multiple heal blocks that you're going to apply to your enemies. Then we have the specialty 4. Instead of applying ability block to one target, you're going to apply ability block to multiple targets for 2 turns in raids and Dark Dimension. This is a super important T4. You shut down literally 6 characters at a time, and it's quite great and so impactful. Like, this is a must-have T4, no questions asked. Then we have the ultimate. The ultimate, it requires a lot of energy to activate, but when you have it ready, you're going to steal 25% health of all enemies and also do some additional piercing damage. On top of that, you're also going to revive 2 additional characters, so because of all these, it's extremely important to have this T4. The steal health and the piercing damage alone would make it quite great, but on top of that, reviving 2 additional characters, it's amazing. So the T4 on the ultimate is must-have. Finally, we have the passive for Vahl. This is another must-have T4. When you apply expose to your enemies and when you attack after the exposed targets, you are going to give energy for your entire team, and you're also going to deal additional damage to your enemies based on whoever has the least amount of health. Once again, whenever you attack that exposed character. So this is another must-have T4, not only for raids and not only for Dark Dimension, but also for other game modes, but it's the most impactful in raids. Okay, so all T4s for Vahl, except the basic is nice to have, but it's something you can skip in case you are really desperate for T4s and you don't want to overinvest. In terms of ISO weight for Vahl, you can use Skirmisher ISO weight if your Vahl is small, but you want to use Striker on her. You want to make sure that she does all the damage, and you want to make sure that she applies expose on all abilities, even the ones that don't apply expose. So you want to make sure Striker has a weight, and you want to attack the targets with a vulnerability and also with exposed. Vahl is like I said, it's the most important character on this team, and that's why it's the character that you want to gear up the most. It's also the character that benefits the most out of having more red stars. So this is a character that you should take to 7 red stars at some point in time, like you did with your Kangs, with your Castles, and so on in the past. Okay, let's move on to the second most important character on this team. Well, there are 2, right? We have Sylvie and we have Loki, but you're gonna talk about Sylvie first. Okay, so in terms of the T4s for Sylvie, there are a few T4s here that are a trap. The T4 on the basic and the T4 on the passive, they are traps. You should not do these T4s because the damage from the passive is not meaningful enough, and the turn rewind on the basic is also not meaningful enough because you never use the basic. You literally never use the basic. Maybe one time per match you use the basic, and because of that it's not important enough. This is also going to affect the ISO weight choices. A few people use Striker ISO weight because do that extra turn rewind on the basic. It doesn't matter. You never use the basic. Now you can use the ISO weight attack to still turn rewind. Like I'm saying, it's not meaningful enough, so forget about it. You can skip the T4 on the basic and the T4 on the passive. Now, T4s that really matter is the special. This is a turn 1 ability, not only in raids but also in other game modes, and it's a guaranteed stun. So guess what? You are going to do this T4 because you want to make sure that whenever you need this stun, that you're going to apply it to your enemies. Then we have the ultimate. The ultimate is extremely important for raids, also Dark Dimension, but most importantly for raids, because you are going to turn rewind your enemies based on how many Bifrost allies you have. And because you are also removing speed up and applying slow to your enemies, you are going to have 50% more value out of this turn rewind. So keep that in mind, because instead of turn rewinding by 50%, you are actually turn rewinding by 75% in terms of the value of the speed. So keep this in mind, because you are applying slow and removing speed up. Even if you don't have the entire team, like I said, you don't need to have the full team. You can use just Vahl, Loki, and Sylvie. The turn rewind plus the slow is impactful enough that your enemies are not going to be able to attack you. So keep that in mind. This is a very important T4, and it's the ability that you usually want to start off your raid attacks with. Okay, so that's in terms of the T4s, special and the ultimate must-have. In terms of the ISO 8 attack, like I said, the Striker ISO 8, that extra turn rewind, it doesn't really matter because you are not going to do the basic often enough. And the ISO 8 attacks, wasting the vulnerabilities for Sylvie is not great. You want to make sure that Vahl is the one benefiting out of those vulnerabilities, or maybe some other character if you prefer. For me, I just use Vahl for that. Now, some people like to use Raider ISO 8 on Sylvie. It's okay, she attacks multiple targets with all of her abilities, but it's inconsistent. The Raider, supposedly it increases your damage output, but like I said, the damage of Sylvie is not meaningful enough. You want to make sure that Vahl is the one doing the damage. In terms of the focus, as you can see, my character has 27,000 focus, which is quite nice, but on the higher difficulties, on difficulty 4, 5 and 6, the enemies have so much resistance that the extra focus is not gonna hurt, quite the opposite. And this is why I prefer Skirmisher to Raider. Let's move on to the next character that really matters, Loki. President Loki, Classic Loki, whatever you want to call it. Loki, he also has some trap T4s. Some T4s, they have value outside of raids, and inside of raids they don't have that much value. First T4 that is a trap is the basic. Yes, you are applying more piercing damage, more bleeds and so on, but the damage is coming from Vahl. The damage from Loki and from Sylvie is not super relevant, so this is a okay T4, it's not super important. Now, there is another trap here. In raids, you always gain evade with the basic. The problem is that Loki has so many evades that the basic might not be impactful, right? If you already have evades from other abilities, the basic from the evade is not gonna stack. So you might be eluded, oh, I'm gonna get more evades. No, you're not gonna get evades because you already have evades and they are not gonna stack. So keep this in mind, that this T4 is a little bit misleading. The damage is not impactful enough, and the evades, it might overlap with other abilities and you might not get the value that you are expecting. The special, it increases the chance of mind controlling 2 targets. I like to use this T4, but it's something that you can skip. Mind control 1 target alone, it's already nice. The 2, of course, it's better, especially if you can predict which characters are going to be mind controlled, but overall it's a T4 that you can skip. Loki Ultimate, it's another trap T4 because you are not getting any value out of this T4 in raids. Apply stealth to self and all allies except the mirror images. It doesn't matter because in the incursion raids, no character can go under stealth in the mystic nodes, so this T4 is not going to have any impact in raids. Gain 2 evades, like I said, if you already have the evades from the basic, if you already have the evades from the passive, then the evades from the ultimate are not going to stack up with other ones. So keep that in mind. It's nice, it's okay, it's not super important, it's helpful in other game modes like Alliance Wars and Cosmic Crucible, but not super important in raids. So it's another one you can skip. Passive. The passive for Loki is the most important T4 for Loki in raids. Whenever you have this passive active, your Asgardian allies, when they drop below 50% health, they're gonna get 3 evades and 3 death proofs. This can activate multiple times during the match, so whether you have Teen Loki healing up your team, or whether you have Deathpool giving drain to your characters and healing them up, this is gonna be huge because, once again, it can activate multiple times, and the passive ability, like I said, it makes the basic and the ultimate of Loki, those evades, they are a bait because you already have 3 evades, so you don't need another evades, they don't stack up, so that's why the other T4s are a huge trap. In terms of ISO 8 for Loki, there is only one option, which is the Skirmisher ISO 8, just to make sure you always land the defense down, always want to land the bleeds and do damage to your enemies. Other options, I don't think they are super important, especially we don't have all the abilities attacking, and that's it. So Skirmisher ISO 8, passive T4, and you can skip everything else on Loki. Now let's talk about Beta Ray build. This character is very controversial. It got already reworked because the character was absolute trash, but he's still trash. When you take a look at the T4 of the basic, he has very low multiplier on the basic, 230% damage, normal damage, it's not piercing, so the damage with the T4 is not going to be super impactful, so you can skip it. Like the damage of Beta Ray build, it doesn't matter, all the damage comes from Vahl. So I don't know, if you're doing any of these abilities, it's probably for other game modes, not for raids, because the damage in raids is not impactful. Now the T4 on the special, very important, like on Sylvie, you're going to get 1 additional stun, and you want to make sure that you always have this stun available, especially because it's a turn 1 ability, And in raids and in Alliance Wars, this ability is probably the most important ability of Battle Ray build. Now we have to talk about the ultimate. This is another controversial T4. In my opinion, this is another bait. If you take a look, once again we have normal damage, and the increased multiplier is also normal damage per positive effect. There is a finite amount of positive effects you can get to Battle Ray build, and if you get 10 positive effects, you are doing 250% more damage. It's just not relevant enough. It's just not relevant enough. If you do the T4, it's still not relevant enough. The damage from Battle Ray build ultimate equates to the damage of Teen Loki special. So as you can see, like, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So I would rather focus on flipping all positive effects into bleeds on each enemy. This is why I'm gonna give a controversial ISO 8 recommendation on Battle Ray build, but it's because I'm using the flip positive effects as my main source of control on the enemies rather than the increased damage, because like I said, the damage is just not impactful enough. Normal damage, and it's dependent on how many positive effects you have and the damage output of the character. Okay, so ultimate, it's a T4 that you can skip. It's okay to have, it's nice to have, but you can also skip it. And then another very controversial T4, it's the passive. This passive T4, it didn't exist in the past. Then it got reworked and they made this nonsense. On self or ally crit, gain 1 charge. This only activates 1 time per character, so it can activate multiple times. For example, if your Battle Ray build attacks and your Thor charges up and also attacks, and your Lady Thor also attacks, you can get multiple charges in 1 turn, but 1 charge per each character that takes action. So yeah, you can get like 7 charges quite quick, or even 10 charges very quick. The problem is that the damage is trash, like the damage multiplier of this ability is trash. So once again we have 200% damage, normal damage, very low multiplier, and then you're applying defense down to 1 target. It's just 1 target, like bro, this is so trash. Compared to Thor that attacks multiple targets at the same time, Battle Ray build only attacks 1 target, and like I said, the multiplier is very low. So in my opinion, this is a super bait T4. The amount of time it takes to charge up in raids is huge. It's not comparable to Alliance Wars, and because of all those factors, this is another T4 that you can skip. So the T4s that really matter in Battle Ray build is just a special and maybe the ultimate, because it's a nice animation, but it's definitely something you can skip if you are trying to save as many T4s as possible. Now, speaking of the ISO 8, you can use Raider ISO 8, Striker ISO 8 or Skirmisher ISO 8 on Battle Ray build. I use him as a Skirmisher because I want to make sure that he lands the stun in all game modes. In terms of Striker ISO 8, it's going to provide you a little bit more energy, but from my experience, it's quite hard to pull off. And because of the counterattacks that you get with this character and the Bifrost team, and also the Hero as Guardians, it actually doesn't matter. You have so many counterattacks that your abilities will be full of energy anyway. So is it going to be impactful? I don't think so. Okay, so Striker ISO 8, it's okay, but not a big deal. And then the Raider. Some people say Raider is amazing, especially because it activates the passive more often. But outside of Alliance Wars, the passive does not matter. So yeah, sure, you can use Battle Ray build as a Raider in Alliance Wars. Outside of Alliance Wars, doesn't really matter. I would go for the Skirmisher, especially if you are considering using this character also in Dark Dimension 6. And finally, we have the third of the team. This is something that Dogbert mentions. There is always a third on the team, and unfortunately, it's Teen Loki, which is disappointing because he has a crocodile, and the crocodile looks super legit. Okay, so Teen Loki, which T4s are important? The basic and the passive. These T4s are connected because the passive gives 100% counterattack chance and 60% more damage if your characters have regeneration on them. This only works in raids, so keep that in mind, because outside of raids none of this works. And when you do the basic attack or the isolate attack, if you have the T4, you are going to apply regeneration to your entire team. So that means your entire team will have 100% counter attack chance, 60% more damage, and if you have the regeneration, the basic attack and the counter attack chance will also deal 100% more damage, just the counter attack. So 100% additional damage on the counter attack. So as you can see, the passive and the basic are connected. If you don't have one, don't do the other, because it doesn't matter. And in terms of the special and in terms of the ultimate, you do a little bit more damage to single target and to multiple targets, but because it's normal damage, it's not super important. And like I said, this is a third of the team. This is the character that you could definitely skip and not gear up, because it's just not impactful enough. In terms of the isolate, in my opinion, there is only one option, which is the striker isolate. Like I said, you want to make sure that the entire team has regeneration, and you have to activate that with the counters or with the isolate attack. The other abilities, they also apply regenerations, but you really want to make sure that you have regeneration all the time on your team, and the more regenerations you apply to your team, the more damage also Better Bill is going to do with his ultimate. So the more regenerations you have, the better, and that's why basic attack with striker isolate plus the passive and all these things. Okay, so yeah, that's the Bifrost team. Like I said, there is only one character here that matters, Vahl. The characters that matter after Vahl is Loki and Sylvie. Better Bill and Teen Loki, they are not important at all. Better Bill has some value in Alliance Wars, maybe in the future in Cosmic Crucible, but beyond that, not really. So if you are really desperate to save gold and training materials, you can skip Better Bill and Teen Loki. Now, talking about the position of the team, as you can see, I like to have Better Bill in the middle, followed by Vahl and followed by Loki, and then I have Teen Loki and Sylvie in the corner. Teen Loki and Sylvie are the characters that are the most fragile. Those are the characters that you want to make sure that they don't have a lot of negative effects. So I like to keep them in the corners to keep the attention of the enemies far away from them. Then Loki and Vahl, those are the characters that you want to counterattack as often as possible. And that's why you're going to put them together with the tank, right? This is the same setup that you use for the Rebirth team. You want to make sure that the characters that have the most important counterattacks are always using them. And this is going to increase the damage output and energy generation of your team. Okay, so that's the setup in terms of position for raids for the Bifrost team. Now, we can talk quickly about the game modes, and for that we're going to take a look at the infographic. And in terms of the game modes of these characters, you can see that they are quite decent on Blitz, especially because they help other teams. And you can see that Teen Loki is the worst character because he depends on other characters in order to be good. The Bifrost team is not going to have any relevance in Arena. In terms of raids, as I said, the only characters that really matter is Vahl, Sylvie and Loki. Teen Loki and Better Bill you can 100% skip. In terms of Dark Dimension, none of these characters are going to have any value except Vahl. Alliance Wars, like I said, Better Bill has some value with Hero Asgardians. But Vahl, you can use Vahl together with any kind of other team, especially if they are beefy teams like Unlimited, like Darkhold, and this also applies for Cosmic Crucible. Vahl can be together with those characters as well because she has a chance of reviving and so on. And then we have Loki. Loki is very important in Alliance Wars and also in Cosmic Crucible because he synergizes with other powerful Mystic controllers. We have Doctor Doom, we have Morgan Le Fay, we have Cersei, and Loki together with those characters is super impactful in all kinds of metas that we have. Now we have Season 3, now we're going to Season 4, and I'm sure that Loki together with any Mystic controller is still going to be quite impactful. And then we have Sylvie. Maybe there is a world where Sylvie is going to have some impact in Alliance Wars in Cosmic Crucible, but like I said, because Loki has more important characters to synergize with, Morgan Le Fay, Doctor Doom, and Cersei. Unfortunately, it makes Sylvie to fall flat and not be impactful enough on the game modes we just mentioned. But overall, this is a somewhat decent team with some flexibility, not the best, but not the worst. And if you really love the Bifrost team, you can definitely get some value out of them, except Teen Loki, which is very unfortunate. I really wish I could see that crocodile more often because it's super awesome. But yeah, guys, those are the new recommendations for the Bifrost team. As you can see, there is a lot of gold, trade materials, T4s, and ISO8 that you can save because, yes, for the main game mode where they matter, which is raids, you can pair them up with other characters like Deadpool, Dormammu, Morgan Le Fay, and other mystic characters. And like this, you can save tons and tons of resources on your Bifrost team. So that's going to be the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to smash that like button, and if you found the video helpful, make sure to share it to your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe for more Marvel Strike Force content, and I'll catch you guys later.